In the year 1943, the province of Bengal stood at the precipice of a tragedy that would scar the history of South Asia forever. Once known as a land of plenty, the golden fields were turning into a landscape of silence, dust, and mounting despair. For the millions who lived off this land, the horizon offered no hopefully. The approaching shadow of a hunger they could not escape. The Great Bengal Famine remains one of the most controversial events of the 20th century. Was it nature's cruelty or man's indifference? The geopolitical storm began in the east. As the Japanese Empire swept through Burma, the vital supply of rice to India was severed. Burma had been the rice bowl for Bengal. Without these imports, the delicate balance of food security in the region collapsed almost overnight. The British administration, fearful of an imminent invasion, began to view food and transport through the cold lens of scorched earth military strategy. Then, nature struck a cruel blow. In October 1942, a massive cyclone ripped through the coastline, drowning thousands and destroying local granaries. A subsequent fungal blight, known as brown spot disease, ravaged the remaining rice crops, leaving the harvest thin and the stalks withered. The combination of war and weather created a shortage, but the ensuing response would turn a crisis into a full-scale catastrophe. Under the boat denial policy, British officials ordered the destruction of tens of thousands of local wooden boats, fearing they would aid invaders. But these boats were the lifeblood of rural Bengal. Without them, farmers couldn't fish, and traders couldn't move grain to the starving hinterlands. The colonial administration's priority was not the survival of the peasantry, but the defense of the empire at any cost to the local population. In the cities, government warehouses were packed to the rafters with grain. This food was reserved for the military and essential industrial workers. While the army was fed, the civilian markets were left empty. Supply was artificially constrained, and the mechanism of distribution was broken by design. Speculators and wealthy merchants began hoarding what little rice remained, driving prices to levels that a common laborer could never afford. Inflation spiraled out of control. A handful of grain that once cost pennies now required a week's wages, leaving the poor to starve. The decisions that sealed Bengal's fate were made thousands of miles away in London, in the smoke-filled rooms of the British War Cabinet. Winston Churchill, the Lion of the West, viewed India as a secondary concern compared to the life-and-death struggle against Nazi Germany. When presented with reports of the unfolding famine, his responses were often dismissive, famously questioning the reality of the crisis. Despite pleas from the Viceroy of India for urgent food aid, Churchill and his cabinet repeatedly refused to divert shipping capacity to the region. Grain ships from Australia and North America sailed past the ports of Calcutta, bound instead for the United Kingdom and the Mediterranean. Food was being stockpiled in Britain for future post-war needs, while millions in the colonies were already dying of immediate starvation. By mid-1943, the famine had reached the heart of Calcutta. The city was flooded with skeletal figures who had walked for days in search of crumbs. The streets became a gallery of horrors. Families huddled in despair, their cries for help fading into the silence of the city. Artist Chitta Prasad captured these scenes in haunting sketches, documenting a reality that the official colonial censors tried to hide. The scale of the mortality was so high that traditional rites became impossible. The landscape was littered with those the world had forgotten to buy even a single meal. Families sold their last possessions. They gave up their jewelry, their tools, and eventually, their land itself. This massive transfer of assets led to a permanent state of poverty for the survivors, enriching a small class of land grabbers. The famine was not just a loss of life. It was a total collapse of the social and economic fabric of rural Bengali society. Decades later, the debate over responsibility remains fierce. Was it a natural disaster exacerbated by war, or a direct result of colonial policy? Nobel Laureate Amartya Sen argued it was an entitlement failure. There was food, but the poor were denied the means to access it. Contemporary researchers point to the denial policies and the refusal of relief as evidence of a tragedy that could have been prevented. The legacy of 1943 remains a somber reminder of the human cost of imperialism and the dangers of prioritizing geopolitics over human life. 2 to 3 million souls lost. Their stories demand to be remembered, not as victims of nature, but as casualties of history. A tragedy of policy. A lesson for the future. May we never look away from the silence of the hungry again.